we are starting a brand new series called Sent. Did it work? Did it come up behind me as soon as I went like this? Awesome. We're starting a brand new series called Sent, and I'm excited to talk for the next 4 weeks on what it means that God sends us to things. If you remember, we just finished a series called Called. Thank you very much. And in our series called Called, what we've done is we've been talking about what it means to be called. What is my calling is a question that I get asked a lot. Sometimes I get asked the question, what am I supposed to do? Or now that I'm a believer, what does this look like? And what we said over and over and over again is that calling is about who you are, not what you do, right? Calling is about who you are, not what you do. Because I'll be honest with you, if we don't get this part right, anything else we do is about us, not about Jesus. If we don't start with something formative in who we are, then it doesn't really matter. And so I kept saying over and over again, calling is about who you are, not what you do. But the question is, well, don't Christians do things? Yes, of course they do. But unless we understand this piece, we can't understand the rest. And so this piece sends us on our track that we call here at Connection Point becoming an everyday disciple, right? An everyday disciple. Someone who is choosing to follow Jesus, is being changed by Jesus, and is on mission with Jesus, right? Following Jesus, being changed by Jesus, and on mission with Jesus. Well, that on mission with Jesus piece is a do. But it's not about what we do. It's about who we are, right? The calling that everybody has on their life is that we're called to be saved. We're called to accept Jesus in our life. That is a calling on our life. We're called to be sanctified. And what that means is that we're taking steps in the way we live our life to look more like Jesus. It's called becoming holy. We don't do that on our own. We do that out of being saved. We got to get them in the right order, right? You're saved. Then as Jesus saves you, he calls you to make changes in behavior to look more like him. That's called becoming sanctified. And then now that we're being saved and sanctified, we're ready to be sent. Not because we're fully holy, but because we're moving towards Jesus. We're ready to be sent. Saved, sanctified, and sent. What we talked about in that series where I said it's about who you are, not about what you do, what I've been talking about over and over again is what's called formative calling. I didn't call it that, but that's really what I'm talking about. That there's actually 3 kinds of callings, and we're going to run through them really fast, okay? There are 3 kinds of callings. The first one is called a formative calling, and that calling is on every single one of us to be saved, to be sanctified, and to be sent. That this is the foundational piece of who we are. The other callings that we have come out of the overflow of these 3 things. That as we're saved, sanctified, and sent, now we're sent into something that's an overflow of what God is already doing in us. Does that make sense? So the first calling is about who we are. It's formative. The second calling is a vocational calling. Like, believe it or not, you have a calling in the way you work. Well, Pastor Tim, I'm retired. I don't work anymore. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. We all still work, but we have a vocational calling. Some people are called to be a doctor or to be a teacher. Some people are called to bag groceries at Kroger with a smile on their face. All of it is calling, and all of it is vocational. All of it is about the work, right? Can I be honest with you? Hear my heart. I think Christians should be the best workers. Like, not because we're trying to do some kind of sneaky thing where everybody gets saved, but because we just work hard. Because we actually care about what we do. Because we know that this world is temporary. We know that everything in it is temporary. And we know that while we're on this earth, we represent someone larger than ourselves. We should just be good at work. So if you're a plumber, if that's part of your vocational calling, would you do me a favor and be the best plumber in Sydney? For real. If you bag groceries at Kroger, would you be the best, like the very best and kindest grocery bagger that Kroger has ever seen? Not because it's just some kind of like, hey, if I do that, then maybe Jesus will. No, it's not. That's okay. It's okay to obviously share Jesus with people. But what I'm saying is just in the way we work, it should just be that good. Whether people understand it's Jesus or not, they're like, man, that's a good worker. They are good at their job. It's a vocational calling. So the formational calling is who you are. Your vocational calling is what you do. And the third calling is a missional calling. Man, believe it or not, what I'm going to propose to you is that every single person who has said yes to Jesus has a missional calling. A missional calling where the Lord is asking something of you to do in this world for him. What do you mean by that? Do you mean like, I got to go to Africa? Maybe. Do you mean like I have to, I don't know, like use some of my own resources to accomplish it? Maybe. Do you mean I have to give up time because I love my time? And I already don't have enough time as it is? Maybe. But there's a missional calling, and this missional calling that I'm talking about really is the piece where we're going to talk about what it means to be sent. Okay? So how do I know that there's a missional calling for everyone? How do I know that this is a real thing? Well, I'm going to take you very quickly to Paul's letter to a church in Ephesus, which is just on the outskirts of Turkey. Paul wrote a letter to them, and he said this, "For we are God's handiwork." Everybody say handiwork. Handiwork. In other translations, it's not handiwork, it's masterpiece. We are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus. Why? To do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. You and I have been created in Christ Jesus to do good works that God already had a plan for us to do before we even knew that we were going to be a believer. He's already got a plan for you. Well, I've not done anything to move towards Jesus, and I've already screwed up my life. So did I just screw up his plan? No. Right where you are, God still has a plan for your life. It's a missional calling. Every follower of Jesus has a missional calling that is prepared for them by God. It's not prepared for them by connection point. It's prepared for them by God himself. And that's the whole purpose of a series we're doing called Sent. I did it again. That's why we're doing this. That's why we're doing this series. I'm going to spend the next 4 weeks, well, actually, Pastor Janine 1 week and me the other 3. We're going to spend the next 4 weeks kicking you over and over again. Because I believe that we have done a terrible job as American Christians of being sent. We love to do church. We don't like to be church. And so we're going to kick you and agitate you and hopefully put you in a position where you go, oh no, I'm sent and I don't want to be. But I'll do it anyway because God has called me to it. How are we going to do that? We are going to spend our time in Egypt between 1876 BC and 1446 BC. That's about 4,000 years ago. Give or take 500 years, right? We're going to be in Egypt. We're in Egypt in a period of time where the Israelites are there and they're enslaved. When they first got there, around the time of Joseph, not the father of Jesus, but the Joseph in Genesis, when they first get there, they're loved by the Egyptians. Joseph has high authority and power. We find out in Exodus chapter 1 that the Pharaoh who loved Joseph has died, and now pharaohs have taken over time, and they've decided they got a problem with the Hebrew people. And here's their problem. The Hebrew people take very seriously the gift of God to be fruitful and multiply. They got lots of kids. Lots and lots of kids. And they keep growing up and they have lots of kids, lots and lots of kids. And now all of a sudden, this Israelite nation is huge. And the Egyptians start to realize, the Pharaoh starts to realize, if I don't do something about this, they could actually probably take us over. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to kill every newborn male baby for a while to try to skirt this population issue. Well, there was one mother who just had a newborn baby, and she decided she did not want to see her baby killed. So she built a little tiny raft, or in scripture, if you want to be technical, it's the same word for ark. She built him this little tiny boat, and she sent him down the river. And in sending him down the river, he was taken by some Egyptian high-level people who raised him to be basically a prince of Egypt. And his name was Moses. Moses. Raised Egyptian. Now here's what I need you to do. For anyone in this room who has seen the movie The 10 Commandments, I need you to erase it from your brain. Okay? I gotta be honest with you, I love the movie The 10 Commandments. It's old school, it makes me smile. But as a Bible nerd, my favorite thing to do is to point at the TV and say, that's not in the Bible. I'm like, that's not in the Bible. That's Charlton Heston, Moses never said that. Yeah, I just point TV and just talk about all the things that are not actually real. Okay? So in order for us to have this conversation, you can't go, wait a minute, that's not in the 10 Commandments. All right? We're going to talk about Moses and his life being raised Egyptian. We're going to pick up with him as an adult. Exodus chapter 2, verse 11 and 12. One day, after Moses had grown up, he went out where his own people, he knew he was Hebrew, he went out where his own people were and watched them at their hard labor. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his own people. Looking this way and that and seeing no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. Dang. I mean, he killed a guy and he buried him in the sand because he was angry. He was outraged at what was happening to his own people. So what happens next is basically he thinks he got away with it. A couple days later, there's two Hebrew people fighting. Moses steps in to break up the fight, and they say, oh, are you going to kill us and put us in the sand like you did that guy the other day? And Moses goes, oh no, people know what I did. Word gets back to the Pharaoh. The Pharaoh decides he's going to have Moses killed. Before that happens, Moses takes off in the desert, and he ends up in a city called Midian. And this is where we pick up the story. Exodus chapter 2, verse 16. Now a priest of Midian had 7 daughters. They came to draw water and fill the troughs to water their father's flock. Some shepherds came along and drove them away, but Moses got up and came to their rescue and watered their flock. Imagine, these women are filling up their troughs and these shepherds come along, and here comes this young, strapping prince of Egypt to save the day for all the ladies. Right? He steps in and goes, hey, knock it off, shepherds. He whoops them. They run away with all their water. They get home and they're like, Daddy, Daddy. So there's this guy, right? He's so cute and so strong. And he beat up like 10 shepherds. And their dad, Jethro, basically looks at them and says, did you bring him home? I got 7 daughters. Like, did you bring him home for dinner? And they said, no. And he said, go get him. So Moses comes home. He has dinner with the 7 daughters and the father, and they talk. And eventually he takes one as his wife. Her name is Zipporah. Now, Zipporah in Hebrew means bird. So I don't know what she looks like, but I got this picture in my head. She looks like a bird. So Moses marries Zipporah. They have about 40 years of marriage together. They have children, right? And this is where we pick up 40 years later. 40 years later, Exodus chapter 2, verse 23. During that long period, the king of Egypt died. The Israelites groaned in their slavery and cried out, and their cry for help because of their slavery went up to God. God heard their groaning and remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. So God looked on the Israelites and was concerned about them. Before we go any further, I just want you to know that we serve a God who is concerned about us. No matter what you're going through, no matter how bad it is, no matter how empty it feels, he's concerned. He's with you. He sees you. He's concerned. Now Moses, in Exodus chapter 3, verse 1, Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. And he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Oreb, the mountain of God. The other name for Oreb is Mount Sinai. Same mountain, okay? A lot of scholars believe that Oreb was the name of the region where the mountain was, and Sinai is the name of the actual mountain, so they're interchangeable, okay? So came to the Oreb, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him, flames of fire within a bush. Moses saw that the bush was on fire and did not burn up. I'm sure things are on fire all the time in the desert. But Moses saw this bush and it wasn't burning up. And he moved towards it. Verse 4, when the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called to him from within the bush, Moses, Moses. So let's be clear. There's a bush on fire and now it's talking. Moses, Moses. And Moses said, here I am. Do not come any closer, God said. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. God calls Moses to the bush, but God doesn't want Moses to forget something. And he doesn't want us to forget either. Never forget the power and majesty of God. Yeah, God's our friend. It's great. I love being a friend of God. I'm glad God is my friend. But that does not mean that he's still not the same God who created the universe. God is more than just your friend, folks. Aren't you glad he's your friend? I am, but he's more than just our friend. He has a power and majesty that we should never take for granted. We should not approach God with hey, so I got some stuff for you today. He is the God of the universe who created all things, and his name should make us tremble. Yes. Not because we're afraid to get struck by lightning, but because he's that powerful. He's that powerful. Never forget the power and majesty of God. Verse 6, then he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. He understood God's power. The Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. I want you to see something really important. Moses saw a bush. That bush made him curious, so he moved towards it, right? The curiosity of Moses led him to hear the heart of God. That because he leaned in, because he took a step forward and didn't just go, that's weird, I'm getting out of here. Because he leaned in, Moses had the opportunity to hear what breaks God's heart. To hear what God is trying to do. Can I tell you that if you have curiosity about what God is doing, if you'll lean in and not just go, never mind, I'm too busy. If you'll lean in, maybe, just maybe, you'll hear the heart of God. It's a beautiful moment. A beautiful moment. Verse 8, so I have come down to rescue them. Who has come down to rescue them? God, right? God has come down to rescue them. Who has come down to rescue them? Let me get 90% participation. Who has come down to rescue them? God. See, the other 10%, I let you off the hook, right? God has come down to rescue them. This is very, very, very important. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and bring them up out of the land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing of milk and honey. Milk and honey, that's a really weird thing to say. So let me try to break that down for you quickly. Milk meaning a place where there's animals and vegetation, and there's new baby animals coming because the mom animals are actually getting enough food to actually carry young. And there's plenty of milk in that place. There's plenty of wild livestock. There's plenty of plants and vegetation for you to go there and live there. That's milk. And then there's honey. It's a place that's sweet and pleasurable. A place that you want to be. So what you're telling me, God, is that there's a place that you have prepared for the Israelite people where their food needs will be met without concern. And they will love being there? Yeah, that's exactly what God has prepared for his people. It's exactly what he has prepared. Verses 9 and 10. Now the cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. Now that you've heard my heart, Moses, and you understand what I'm trying to do here, I need you to go to Pharaoh. I am sending you there. But Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? So let's just stop and talk about the phrase, who am I? Who am I? It's a phrase we would use if God asked us to do something. Who am I to tell somebody about Jesus? I got saved yesterday. Who am I to talk to somebody about the Lord? I don't know what's in the Bible. I don't know where Pastor Tim gets all that stuff. I don't know what to say. I don't know where it is. Who am I? Who am I to go pray with people in jail or in prison? I've never been to jail before. Send somebody who knows what they're doing. Who am I to work with women who have been abused or trafficked? Who am I to do those things? I've never been a part of any of that. Who am I? Am I alone in the idea that that's what I say all the time when God asks me to do something? I'm not qualified. Who am I? I want you to know something. If you have not heard anything else I've said today, here's the thing I want you to cling to. When God sends you, it's never about your ability. When God sends you, it's never about you. When God sends you, he doesn't expect you to go, well, do I have the skills to do that? He expects you to understand who's sending you, right? When God sends you, it's not about you. Verse 12, and God said, I will be with you. Say that with me. I will be with you. And this will be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. Here's how you know it's me, Moses. I already know where you're going to worship me before you've even done what I've asked you to do. You're coming right back here. The very same mountain where Moses receives the 10 Commandments. It takes him right back to that same place. But when we say, who am I? God says, I will be with you. I will be with you. You don't have to be skilled or talented enough to do what I've called you to do because I'm the most skilled and talented one that ever existed. I will be with you. Verse 13, Moses said to God, suppose I go. Are you serious? God lays this whole thing out for him. Here's you're going, I will be with you, here's the plan. And Moses is like, suppose I actually do this. Suppose I actually listen. Suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you. And they ask me, what is his name? Interesting word, name. Name doesn't mean what you call somebody. Name means who you are, your character, the way you live. Names had meaning for many, 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 many centuries. What is his name? How do I respond to that question? God said to Moses, I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. So imagine this. Moses gets in front of the Israelites, and God has sent me to you. And they're like, well, what's his name? And he says, I am. And they're like, we know, you're Moses. He's like, no, his name is I am. No, yes, you're Moses. It's a very confusing thing to say. What Moses is actually being asked to say is not, I am. He's asked to say something else. In Hebrew, it's the word Yahweh. Man, even saying that word, my hairs just went like this on my arm. Because this is the actual name of God. Yahweh in Hebrew means he is who he is. What should I tell them your name is? What's his name? He is who he is. It also translates to he will be who he will be. It also translates to he was who he was. because he transcends all time. This name is not uttered by Jewish people because of its power. 4 consonants, Y, H, W, H. If there was a Jewish leader listening to me say the name Yahweh, they would be disgusted that I would actually say his name out loud. In fact, in Scripture, and even in regular conversation, Israelites, instead of saying this name, they call him Adonai. You ever heard that word, Adonai? It means Lord. They also call him Elohim, which means God. But Elohim applies to any God. And they were so afraid to say this name that even when they wrote it in the Old Testament in Hebrew, they didn't even put YHWH on paper because they were afraid as someone was reading, they would say it by accident. So they created a symbol in the Hebrew scrolls to stop you from saying the YHWH. And what they did is they took the word Adonai and they took the word Yahweh and they made one word out of both of them so that when you saw it on paper, your mouth would say Adonai, not Yahweh. And this was the hybrid word that was created, that was never meant to be said out loud. It was meant to remind them not to say Yahweh. The hybrid word was Yehovah, which we say Jehovah. That word was the word on paper to keep you from saying YHWH. It was that powerful and still is. Y'all, when we utter the name Yahweh, it should make us tremble because of its power. The majesty and power of God should never be taken for granted. Should never be taken for granted. Verse 15, God also said to Moses, say to the Israelites, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my name forever. The name you shall call me from generation to generation, which is exactly what they do. Verse 16, go assemble the elders. Do you see how he's telling Moses exactly what to do? Who's in charge here? Not Moses. This is exactly what you're going to do. Go assemble the elders of Israel. Say to them, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, appeared to me and said, I have watched over you and have seen what has been done to you by Egypt. And I have promised to bring you up out of your misery in Egypt into the land of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, a land flowing with milk and honey. I'm going to pluck you out of Egypt. That word there means to rob or to plunder. I'm going to pluck you out. I'm going to steal you from Egypt, right? And I'm going to do that, and I've already got a place prepared for you, so don't even worry about it. Verse 18, the elders of Israel will listen to you. Then you and the elders are to go to the king of Egypt and say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. Let us take a 3-day journey into the wilderness to offer sacrifices to the Lord our God. But I know the king of Egypt will not let you go unless a mighty hand compels him. That is not the hand of Moses. That is not the mighty hand that will compel him. And then here is my favorite verse in the whole text. Verse 20. So I will stretch out my hand and strike the Egyptians with all the wonders that I will perform among them. After that, he will let you go. The reason I love this verse is I love it in Hebrew more than I love it in English. Okay? The word send in Hebrew means to stretch out. It also means to let something happens, and it also means to go from something. So how it actually reads in Hebrew is, so I will send out my hand, strike the Egyptians with all the wonders that I will perform among them. After that, he will send you sent. That's what it really says in Hebrew. He will send you sent. You're getting out of here, and he's going to do it, and it's going to happen because I'm going to send my hand, and he's going to send you out. I will be there. I will go in front of you, and because of that, you will be sent and let go. You will be sent and let go. Verse 21, and I will make the Egyptians favorably disposed towards this people, so that when you leave, you will not go empty-handed. Time out. He's saying, I will send you sent, and they will like it. Man, I try that on my kids. You will eat this food, and you will like it. You will listen to my direction and you will like it. It doesn't work. But God's saying it works with a whole group of people that are really powerful. They will send you and they will like it. They will like it. Every woman is to ask her neighbor and any woman living in her house for articles of silver and gold and for clothing, which you will put on your sons and daughters, and so you will plunder the Egyptians. See, I will plunder them by taking you out, and then you will plunder them, in theory, by taking their gold and silver and their clothes. And they will like it. How cool is that? How cool is that? Let's be honest. Okay, let's just slow down. Let's be honest. The likelihood that when we talk about being sent, that God is going to send one of us to save a group of people from a leader is pretty crazy. I don't foresee a situation where God is going to send one of us to Piqua to save the people of Piqua to bring him back to the promised land, which is Sydney. I'm just saying. I mean, we can keep praying for them. Maybe someday they'll come to the land flowing of Culvers and B-dubs. But, I mean, here's the thing. I don't think we're going to be saving people from some place and bringing them somewhere else. I mean, this is an extreme scenario. I mean, that's not really the missional calling that God is probably going to have for one of us in this life. But here's what I do want to communicate. The feelings that Moses has are the same feelings we have. Who am I? How does this work? Because I believe God has a missional calling on someone's life in this room. He's got a calling on your life to work with people who are addicted to drugs and alcohol. I believe there's someone or someones in this room who God may call to share Jesus with their coworkers and to start a Bible study at their work. I think that there are people in this room who are called to eat at the same place one day a week so that someone at that restaurant knows them by name so that they can be on mission for Jesus and share Jesus with somebody. I mean, it's not go to Egypt for most of us. It's understanding what God is asking of us and beginning to do it. So here are some things I want you to think about as we close, okay? The first is this. If you walk with God, you will be sent. Listen, maybe we didn't tell you in the fine print when we told you about the resurrection of Jesus and how he loves you and he died for you. Maybe we forgot to tell you. And once you say yes to that, you will have a missional calling. My bad. But it doesn't make it any less true. God is calling 100% of the followers of Jesus to be sent on mission. 100%. Okay? But I also want you to know this. We are qualified to lead others to God simply because of who our partner is. It's not about what we do. It's not us. It's him. Many of you know that before I was a pastor, for about 10 years, I was a therapist. I was a counselor. And I worked with people every day who struggled. And maybe you can look at me now as a pastor and say, well, of course he's a pastor. He's good at talking with people. He's good at helping people with their problems. Like it's the right fit. He's a pastor. If I can be really transparent and kind of ugly with you, my skills as a communicator, my skills as a therapist, my skills at someone who's good at putting things into words, I guess. There are times that I use those skills and I don't include Jesus. And when I do, it hurts people and it hurts me because I'm not that good. In fact, as your pastor, if I didn't lean on Jesus, I'll walk every single one of us off a cliff with my skills. But when I hand those skills over to the Father and I say, Lord, you can use these however you want, I'm just going to lean on you. When I do that, it's awesome. It's awesome because I get to be who God created me to be under his authority because he's the one leading. He's saying, I will go. And I'm saying yes to going where he sent me. See, if you come here every Sunday because you like to hear me talk, you're missing the whole point. You're missing the whole point. The point is, it's Jesus talking. Because I've submitted myself to him. And I do my very best to lead that way as your pastor. So if you're sitting around thinking to yourself, well, these are the skills I have, so this is how God's going to use me, or these are the skills I don't have, so God can't use me, I want to be really frank with you. It's never been about you, and it's never been about me. It's been about the one who sends us, leading the charge, and us grabbing on tight. You are qualified to do whatever God calls you to do because of who your partner is, not because of you. So if it sounds crazy, it's probably God. Okay? Lastly, because he is your partner, where he sends you may surprise you. Where he sends you may surprise you. I told a completely different story in first service, but let me tell a different one in second. Where he sends you may surprise you. I want to introduce you to a couple. Their names are Mike and Tammy. Mike and Tammy, could you just stand up? I won't make you stand the whole time, but would you stand up because I want people to see your face? That's Mike and Tammy. Everybody say hi, Mike and Tammy. Mike and Tammy, you can sit down because I don't want to embarrass you. Mike and Tammy showed up here, I'm going to say in September. Does that sound about right? Mike and Tammy showed up in September, and I have their permission to share this. Mike and Tammy showed up in September, and they showed up because they had need. Mike and Tammy were homeless in September. And they weren't sure where to go or what to do, but they knew they needed to stay somewhere and to just get themselves back together. And Pastor Janine began to partner with them. We got them to stay in a hotel room, and they said, we'll see you on Sunday. But let me tell you a little secret. Everybody that we help at church tells us we'll see them on Sunday. And most of them don't show up. That's just what's real. So even when they say that, we say, great, you're always welcome here, but people don't show up. Mike and Tammy showed up on Sunday. And they showed up the Sunday after. And they showed up the Sunday after. And Mike and Tammy just kept telling us how grateful they are to be a part of a church family. And we can't buy them a house. We can't fix their need, but we can love on them. And then we get to October, and it's Pastor Appreciation Month. And everyone gets, some of you people send us cards and give us gift cards, and we're so grateful for all that. But the gift card I was most grateful for, it was from Mike and Tammy. Mike and Tammy had no place to stay, and they gave every pastor on our team a gift card. Are you kidding me? Well, eventually they found a home, and it's about 45 minutes away, if I'm not mistaken. And I said to them, I'm so grateful you finally found a place. We'll help you find a good church there. And they looked at me like I was crazy. And they said, we don't need a good church there. We have a good church here. And I said, Mike and Tammy, the gas money alone, it'll be crazy trying to get here. And they said, we don't care. We'll figure it out. We're coming to church. I'm like, okay. And they kept coming. At Christmas time, a lot of you will give gifts just to say Merry Christmas to your pastoral staff. The greatest gift I received was a plate of cookies that came from Mike and Tammy from their very new stove in their new house. And not only did I get cookies, but every member of our team got cookies from Mike and Tammy. And I thought to myself, man, these people continue to give generously, and they don't have much at all. Let's fast forward. I get a call from a woman in our church named Emily. Emily, will you stand just for a second? I won't make you stay, I promise. That's Emily. Everybody say hi, Emily. You can sit down. Emily gives me a call and says, I have an idea, but I want to talk to you about it. I'm like, okay. And she says, I've had this thing in my mind for a long time, and I'm ready to get moving on it, and I just need to talk to somebody to get things moving. And I'm like, well, tell me about it. And she said, it's called Dwell House. And here's what I want to do. I want to help people who are leaving homelessness and are moving into their new homes have an actual home, like rooms set with couches and beds and things like that. Not to turn it into an HGTV special, but to give them the basics that they need with gently used or brand new furniture. And she goes back in October, I believe. She filed for her nonprofit status, and she got it all moving. Emily has another business that does a lot of I'm gonna get this wrong and you're gonna correct me later, but a lot of like interior design and things like that. Close enough? Okay, so she wanted to use some of those skills just to help people. And she says to me, I just wish I knew of some family that could help me get this thing started. You know, somebody who's just directly out of homelessness, who needs furniture because they just got a new house. And I went, oh, you mean Mike and Tammy? And she was like, I don't know them. And I said, well, let's get you connected. So Mike and Tammy got connected with Emily, who they didn't know each other at all. Emily drove out to their house, took pictures, and then she started on our Facebook page, on the Connection Point family page, just, I need furniture, and I need this, and I need that. Hey, here's the update. Here's what's going on. Emily, your tenacity is crazy. It's awesome. And so she just kept pushing until she got everything she needed. And then finally, we get to a point where she's got all the things in place, and she's figuring out a date to set up everything. In the meantime, Mike and Tammy decide, we want to covenant before God that we don't want to just live together. We're in covenant with each other. Could we do some sort of ceremony here? Not necessarily like a government official wedding, but could we just stand in front of God and say that we are together? And so 3 weeks ago at this point, two weeks, thanks guys. 2 weeks ago, we had a ceremony right here in this room. We had someone who had a wedding dress who tailored it for Tammy, right? Right, Mary? And we had people who showed up with food and set up tables, and there was a reception in the gym, and they had a ceremony on this stage where they covenanted before God that they were one, right? And then the very next day, they both got baptized. I mean, these people's lives are being changed, not by Connection Point, but by the Lord, right? I mean, this is a big deal. And so while this is happening, Emily's setting up things, and yesterday, they had a dwell day at Mike and Tammy's house. Mike and Tammy left. A group of people, including Emily's small group, all got together and they refurnished their entire house. And Mike and Tammy came home, and eventually you'll get to see the video if you haven't yet. I've seen the video. Mike and Tammy come home, and you can tell for the first time they have a home. That this is finally their home. And Mike and Tammy look at me this morning and they say, that we don't even know how to thank everyone. We don't even know what to say, but here's what we know. Being a part of this church and walking towards Jesus has completely changed our life. Mike and Tammy said yes. They said yes to the Lord. They said yes to his calling on their lives. They said yes to the things he was sending them to, including becoming one. Emily said yes. She said yes to a calling on her life that was deep. And what God was doing, and neither one of them knew it, is God was saying, your calling and your calling are intertwined, and we're about to see the fruit of that. And my favorite comment of the entire situation comes from Mike. Mike said to me 3 weeks ago, I said, hey, I heard you met my friend Emily. And he said, met your friend Emily? She's going to change our life. And then he said this, can I tell you my favorite part? And I said, sure, tell me about it. And he said, I'm going to help her with the next house. And I said, yes, you are. Because God stirred something in Mike that he wants to help other people in the same situation. Y'all, this is what sending looks like. Amen. It's not Egypt. It's yes to an idea. I mean, Emily had an idea. She had it all planned out. She had everything she wanted to do. She just didn't have people to help yet. And what she needed was someone just to say, here's a person. And now, I think you've got other families getting ready. You've already gotten other families that need the help, and you're getting ready to help with them as well. Emily, that's amazing. That's a yes to being sent. That's a yes to being sent from Mike and Tammy. And I'm telling you, folks, if you'll listen, God is sending you to things that right now don't make sense. He's sending you to things that you're like, man, I don't want to do that. I can't do that. I don't know how that's going to work. And all you need, maybe there's another person who's supposed to be sent with you. And when you get it figured out, it's not as difficult as it sounded. 100% of this room who has said yes to Jesus has a missional calling from God to be sent. And if right now you're thinking to yourself, I have no clue what that is, I want you to know that that's okay. It's okay. You don't have to know. You don't have to know yet. But you will. You will if you search. If you search. Every week we do something called car conversations. It's just questions that you can ask in the car on the way home with your child, or you can ask in the way on the car ride home as adults. The car conversations this week, there's 2 questions. The first is this: what do you think was going through Moses' mind when he heard God calling him? What was going through his mind? The reason you're being asked that question is because when God reveals to you what you're sent to, you're going to feel just like him, so you might as well get those feelings out. What do you think was running through Moses' mind? The second is this: when you dream about what God might send you to, what comes to mind? Maybe there's already something there. So here's what I need you to do, because we're going to journey this together over the next 4 weeks. This week, I don't need you to do anything. What I need from you is to ask yourself a question that maybe you have not ever asked yourself or asked the Lord in a long time. Here's the question: when is the last time you asked God where he wants to send you? When is the last time you looked at your Father in heaven and just said, where do you want to send me? Like, what are we doing? Here I am. Lord, what do you have for me? I don't need you to know, I need you to ask. I don't need you to have it all figured out. I need you to simply ask the question, Lord, what do you have for me? Where is this thing going? Well, Pastor Tim, I'm so old. Haven't I reached a point where God's maybe he should ask someone younger? Nope. If you're breathing, you have a missional calling from the Lord. Well, Pastor Tim, I'm 12. What am I supposed to do at 12? Listen to me, 12-year-old. If you have fallen in love with Jesus, you have a missional calling, and he will speak into your heart what it is. And when he does, just say yes. Just say yes. Because it'll take you on a journey with the God of the universe, because he's going with you. When's the last time you asked God where he wants to send you? So this morning as we close, maybe you need to come forward and pray and just simply say, Lord, I'm going to spend the next month figuring out where you've sent me. Or maybe you know where he sent you and you don't want to do it and you've been kicking and screaming, it's time to stop. Maybe where he's sending you feels so insignificant you've just ignored it. But God works in the insignificance. He works in the small places that don't make much sense. He works there too.